Yeah, I was kind of keeping this a secret. Back at the end of September, I bought a Wii U, and I wanted Sonic Lost World to be the first game review I did for that system. And this game is pretty much the epitome of, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
History tends to repeat itself in funny ways, doesn't it? Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 was Sonic's first leap onto the 7th generation of systems, and Sonic Lost World is his first game on the 8th generation systems. Sonic 06 was poorly received. It's become known as the worst Sonic game on a home system and nearly killed the entire franchise. It was slow, glitchy, and had a poorly written story and was largely unfinished due to Sonic Team rushing it out the door so they could make it on time for the Christmas season that year. So am I saying that Sonic Lost World is just as bad as Sonic 06? No, I am not. It's not glitchy and very much a finished product, but it does leave you asking, why did they go with all these weird design choices? We had Sonic Unleashed Day stages which were inspired from Sonic Rush's gameplay, and Sonic Colors and Generations took those day stages and made them better. And this game feels several steps backwards for a Sonic game.
Sonic Lost World is a result of Sonic fans who are really Mario fans complaining about a Sonic game being a Sonic game. Yeah, don't think about that for too long or blood will shoot out of your nose.
I pointed out in my Sonic Adventure DX review that Sonic fans can never agree on what makes a good Sonic game. For every person that says the games are about speed, you have one saying that they're about exploring, and another saying they're about platforming. And you'll have that one person saying that the games are about Sonic's friends, and that's the person that no one likes, as they're usually the one who draws abundant amounts of Sonic porn. So when Sega decides to make a new Sonic game, they throw their arms up in the air and have no idea what to do. They just throw the dice and see what happens, hoping they'll roll a 7. I had said in a few rant videos that I would like to see the Wii U succeed, but also said that I'd like to see Sonic Lost World be on other platforms. Some people took that as a contradictory statement, saying that if I want to see the Wii U succeed, I shouldn't want a Sonic game exclusive to that system to go to other systems. I thought that it should have been common sense by now that you don't bet on a Sonic game to sell systems. I compared it to betting on a racehorse that just had a cast removed after breaking its leg.
Hence the term Sonic Cycle. Every time a new Sonic game is announced, you hear people saying that Sonic's finally good again and that he doesn't suck anymore. And then, shortly after the game's released, things go really quiet. Almost as if the game never existed at all.
I'm not a Sonic fan. I used to be, but not after Sonic 06. Although I still prefer Sonic over Mario. I keep my expectations at a reasonable level so that the only disappointment I feel is the waste of money, not the disappointment of wanting an amazing game and not getting it. And with the game getting mediocre scores and being criticized mostly for controls, level design, momentum, and among a few other things, the game has been considered a large step back from Sonic Generation Colors, which are two of the more successful and well-received Sonic games in recent history. Now, this is going to be a long review because I'm going to give a first impression and then a second impression. Because this game does not leave a very good first one for many people, as I've watched a live stream of it and the person was cursing at it. Many sites have given it scathing reviews, and a friend of mine decided to trade it in after beating the second level because the game really pissed him off. Well, my first impression has a very negative outlook. I kept playing the game, and the more that I played it, the more I started to like and enjoy it. And that's where my second impression comes in.
So if you rage and shut the video off after my negative first impression, then you're an idiot because you didn't stick around for my positive second impression.
During development, they decided to stray away from the speed-based gameplay and focus more on traditional platforming. During the demo that was done for IGN, the Sega representatives had said that they had gotten a lot of feedback from fans saying that while they liked going fast, they didn't like that Sonic would stop every time he ran into a wall, or they were going too fast and hit a wall of spikes and stuff like that. And drawing from my own experience, reading comments people would leave on my Sonic reviews, people hated the feeling of being on the track when in the 3D sections and wanted to explore more. They hated the boost, thought that the games were too easy, wanted more platforming, said that the game felt like it was on autopilot, and so on and so forth.
Sega took all those complaints and put them into this game, as if to say, here's what you wanted, a Mario game with Sonic instead.
At first, this game does not feel like a Sonic game at all. It feels like there's no sensation to speed that we got like in the last games, and it feels about as slow as Sonic 06. And anytime that Sonic is moving faster than normal, you're not in control. The game goes on autopilot. But thankfully there aren't that many of these sections. Here's the thing, Sonic is supposed to be fast. The Genesis games were fast given the hardware they were on. Sonic Adventure 1, 2, and Heroes were fast. Sonic Generations and Colors were fast, and Unleashed was the fastest Sonic ever was. Sonic 06 was slow and rightfully criticized for its slowness, among other things. The character is Sonic the Hedgehog. He is known as the fastest video game character. Why would you take away his speed? If you take away Sonic's speed, you take away what makes a Sonic game a Sonic game. Sonic games are about speed, then platforming, followed by exploration. When they design the levels in Sonic games, they build them in that way so you can run at top speed but allow you to platform at those speeds without having to slow down. If you focus more on platforming, you have to sacrifice speed to have more control when moving about.
Okay, so they severely reduced the speed. A stupid idea for a Sonic game, but whatever. I can live with that. But why did they give us these weird and somewhat backwards controls?
When you move Sonic with the left analog stick, he moves along the ground like he did back in the Sonic Adventure games. It's an improvement over the more stiff movement from Unleashed to Generations. Everything else is reworked, but it just doesn't really feel that right. The jumping mechanics don't make much sense. A and B jump, and they gave Sonic a double jump, something he's never really needed. But the homing attack is also the same button as the double jump, so you may end up double jumping instead of homing in on enemies. The homing attack feels broken as well. It works in a very odd way. The reticule will lock on before you even jump, and will lock on to one to several targets and you can chain the attack together. Which sounds good, but it doesn't feel like it's implemented that well. I found myself attacking one enemy at a time for a majority of the game as it was just easier, because there were times where the reticule just never popped up or would disappear almost instantly. Why couldn't it work like it did in Generations? Generations was fine. It was perfect. It didn't need tampering. And the homing attack arcs upward instead of going in a straight line. So if there's a platform above you, you may hit that, which will stop the attack.
This game is giving me a headache.
I found myself using the A button to jump and homing attack as the B button only jumps and double jumps. X and Y will roll when moving and will perform a kick attack when in the air and will send an enemy into others if aimed correctly. You can spin dash by hitting ZL, which is a bad button to map it to. The Z buttons on the Wii U controller are really sensitive. I've accidentally tapped it next to a ledge and died. ZR is the run button. Hold it and Sonic will run. This is a pretty stupid idea because you're playing a Sonic game. You want to go fast. And eventually your finger gets tired of holding that button down. They brought back the bounce move too, but with the weird homing system, you may end up using the bounce attack instead of the kick. Why are these controls so overly complicated? Generations had a better, more natural control scheme. Here's what they should have done. B jumps and does the homing attack. Y will spin dash when on the ground and kick when in the air. A will bounce when in the air, and Y is essentially unused. ZR could still be used to run, or better yet, have Sonic run as fast as he did in Generations, and have ZR walk or jog.
Isn't it funny that it took them about 2 years to make this game and I come up with a better control layout in only a couple of seconds?
Yeah, looking at the gameplay footage, you may be thinking that the controls can't be that bad. Well, it's because I've gotten used to them. If you need to get used to the controls, that's not a good thing. You should be able to pick up and play. But enough about the controls in combat. Let's talk level design. Like in the previous Sonic games, the game has 3D and 2D sections. Some stages are strictly 3D, some are strictly 2D, and a few transition from 2D to 3D, but it's not as fluid as it was like in Generations. You just run into a doorway, hit a spring or a cannon, and the screen fades to black and you're stopped at a new point. These levels feel like they weren't designed for Sonic at all, and this is very obvious when you're not holding the run button. You can platform and move about with no issue. There's only a few sections where you need to run, but everything else you can just casually stroll through like any other platform game out there. Without the stages being built for speed, there's nothing special separating this game from all the other platform games. Speed is what separated Sonic games from other platformers.
The stages are designed with a free-running mindset, so this brings in that parkour element, which really doesn't feel like it helps, but only slows you down.
When you look at the levels, you'll notice that there's a lot of stuff in your way. Walls, ledges, and trees are everywhere. If you run into these objects, Sonic will scramble up them, and it just looks kinda sad. Because it slows down the already slow gameplay, and again, this is Sonic the Hedgehog here. He's proven himself to be able to run up and along walls with no problem, especially in games like Unleashed and Generations. It's just really sad to see Sonic this limited in his speed, and every time he'd run up a wall and slide down it, I would just groan because in any other Sonic game, that wouldn't have happened. Even Sonic 06 had better wall running, and you could literally walk up the walls in that game. If this parkour element was in any other game, it would have been fine because it's something that doesn't really belong in a Sonic game. It slows the game down and adds unneeded complexity, resulting in a severely hindered experience. I had said in a previous video that the game reminds me of the cancelled Sonic Extreme and that I was not going to compare it to Super Mario Galaxy. Unfortunately, after playing it, I can't say that anymore. But this game is more of a hybrid of the two. Sonic Extreme had levels that were round like planets which would rotate as Sonic ran around them. The 2D sections really look like some of the video seen from Sonic Extreme. This game also feels like Mario Galaxy when in the 3D sections due to the heavy platforming and exploration focus.
There are times when this game starts to get fun, but then it just does something that pisses you off in some BS manner and puts you in a really bad mood until you finish the level. And that's if you didn't shut the game off already.
In my Sonic Unleashed review, I had stated that the game was a good challenge as the Sonic series has lacked any real challenge since the Genesis days. But Lost World is just frustratingly difficult with annoying mechanics. Even from the start. First we'll go into the annoying things. Like whenever a hint pops up, you'll get an indicator on the screen. To read the hint, you need to stop, look down at the gamepad, press the hint icon, and read the hint. Just display it on my TV so I can read it as I play. There was nothing wrong with how hints were given in the previous games. Sonic Heroes did hints the best. Touch one of the hint rings and a character tells you what to do. Speaking of rings, when you take a hit, you lose all of them, not just a percentage like in the last game. And they scatter pretty far and disappear very quickly. And that brief moment of invincibility doesn't last for too long, maybe 2 seconds. And if you collect 100 rings, you do not get an extra life. And I'm going to repeat that, because it bears repeating. If you collect 100 rings, you will not receive an extra life. This is a staple mechanic of Sonic games, and they took it away. Now I know why Amazon was giving away that pre-order bonus of 25 extra lives. The only way to get extra lives is by being lucky enough to find them in the stages.
I think this headache is starting to turn into a brain tumor.
There seems to be a problem with momentum. Sonic doesn't feel like he maintains any and loses it pretty quickly, which makes jumping a pain in the 2D sections. I could run at full speed, jump, and come up short and fall into a bottomless pit because Sonic loses some of his momentum in the air. Compared to Rayman Origins or the new Super Mario Bros. Series, where the platforming and momentum flowed extremely fluidly and naturally. During Lost World's development, they wanted everything to flow, and that's why they implemented the parkour system. But instead, it feels like it struggles to keep that flow. Because after you run up a wall, the momentum drops. You grab onto the ledge and pull yourself up, which brings you to a full stop. Go watch some videos of people doing parkour. They do everything so fluidly. They don't pause at all. I like that they added the parkour, but it doesn't feel like they did it properly. And if you hated the bottomless pits in Sonic Heroes, you're going to hate this game with a passion. The main method of dying is bottomless pits, or just cheap level design. Like the second Frozen Factory stage where you control Sonic in a big ball of snow and navigate on narrow ledges over a bottomless pit.
There's a fine line between challenge and dicketry, and I'm not gonna lie, dick move, Sega. Dick move.
Or how about everything about Silent Forest Zone 4? It took me 30 minutes to beat this one stage. There are bottomless pits everywhere. There's a section with enemies with spikes, giant spike balls moving back and forth, and enemies on narrow platforms with spring shields, all in a very narrow area with no rings to pick up. Or later on when you get to the section where the lights go out and you can't use the homing attack until you turn the lights on. And at the end of that, there's platforms that rise up and fall into bottomless pits that you need to jump across. This was the level that I hated the most. Fighting enemies feels like a trial and error system. Most enemies can be defeated with a homing attack, others you have to do it with a kick, and some have to be kicked then homing attacked, and others can only be jumped on. And you'll never know until you find out that a certain attack doesn't work. It can and will result in a loss of rings or even death if you don't use the right attack.
But now it's time to shut the game off and take a deep, relaxing breath to calm down. Now I understand that was a lot of negativity, but I felt it was necessary so I could explain my first impression, which might explain why this game got so many negative reviews.
If you go to sites like IGN or Kotaku where the Wii U version got slammed, you can easily hear the disappointment and frustration in their writing. During my playthrough of Lost World, I would periodically stop and read a negative review, and I would agree with them at first. Other reviewers would compare it to Generations, much like I did early in this review. Generations was great. It was fast and fun and had a lot of things people expected from a Sonic game, so going into Lost World, people were expecting a lot of Generations ideas to carry over. But that didn't happen. Lost World did something entirely different, so people who love Generations were severely disappointed. Some people have said that Sonic Team is always trying to reinvent Sonic as his jump to 3D wasn't that good, but they nailed it with Sonic Generations as that game didn't have any gimmicks. It was pure Sonic gameplay, speed, platforming, and multiple paths to the goal.
So you have to go into the mindset that this game is not going to be like Sonic Generations or any other modern Sonic game that you've played. This is something entirely new and different, and this is where my second impression comes in.
When you put Sonic Lost World in, everything you remember about Generations should be forgotten. This game may look like it, but it's not. We're being given a totally new experience. The game is really good graphically. It's bright and colorful, the levels look very imaginative and very reminiscent of old school Sonic games. Levels like these make me wish that Generations didn't have so many city levels. The music is pretty good and original. They fit the stages pretty well, but one thing about Sonic games is that they always do music really well. The voice cast from the previous game make a return. I know a lot of people hate that Roger Craig Smith does the voice of Sonic now, but the same hatred was met when Jason Griffith took over the role, and some people still wanted Jaleel White to reprise the role. I prefer Roger Craig Smith, because he really brings Sonic's extrovert personality to life. Ryan Drummond was just flat, and Jason Griffith was more introverted.
Look, it's all a matter of getting used to it. I had to get used to the guy who took over the role of Dumbledore after the first two Harry Potter movies because the original guy died.
You'll hear that Lost World used Mario Galaxy as a cheat sheet, and while that accusation isn't unjustified, Lost World does many things of its own. First off, Mario Galaxy heavily relied on the gravity mechanic and how it affected platforming on a whole, giving some floaty weightlessness and making use of celestial bodies' own gravity. Sonic Lost World doesn't use this type of physics at all. Yes, you can rotate around the areas you're in, but there's no gravity gimmick like Mario Galaxy. If you look at the videos of Sonic Extreme though, there's a noticeable similarity in how Sonic moves about the levels. While Mario Galaxy and Lost World look similar, they play completely different. The Wisp power-ups make a return. At time of writing I haven't played Sonic Colors, but I hear it's one of the best recent Sonic games. The Wisp powers are for the most part useless and not required with a few exceptions. Sometimes you need to use the drill or rocket power in a few stages, and the rhythm and hover wisps are good for avoiding tricky platforming areas where instant death awaits at a bottomless pit. The laser wisp is good for skipping sections of the stage, but that's if you manage to hit those blue diamond relays and not fly off to your death. The game tells you to use the Wii U controller in some way to use the wisp power, like using the controller's gyroscope to use the rocket wisp.
And launch! I died? What the fuck?
But you can use the analog sticks to control certain wisps, and it makes things easier as you don't have to worry about using the Wii U touchscreen for certain required parts. But the game doesn't tell you that. I'm not a fan of the wisp powers, although I hear that they're better in Sonic Colors. Where Sonic Lost World really excels is platforming and exploration though. The game heavily encourages you to explore. Wandering around often yields rewards like capsules containing animals to free or 1-ups. I found plenty of 1-ups just by exploring areas I wouldn't normally go. And the red ring stars make a return. 5 in each stage. Collect them all and you will unlock the ability to play as Super Sonic. And these red rings are very well hidden, and may require a few playthroughs of the stages to get them all, as they very well may be on an alternate path you didn't take. Some stages have a lot of different paths for you to take. Others have a few, and there are others that are pretty linear.
In all the reviews that I read, no one talked about this game's difficulty, and this is probably the hardest Sonic game ever made. It does not hold your hand at all.
If you're looking for a really good challenge, you found it. I never died this much in a Sonic game before. Not this much in Sonic 06 due to all of its glitches, not this much in Sonic Unleashed, and I thought that game had some good challenge to it. But this is something else. You can consider this to be the Sonic equivalent of Mario Lost Levels. You need to master this game, and I mean master it, because some of these areas are insane when it comes to difficulty. But the game is not unfair when it comes to difficulty. It's a matter of needing patience to plan your jumps carefully to make sure you don't die. And the game can be forgiving. After you lose about 3 lives, you're given an item that you can use to skip to the next checkpoint, and checkpoints are pretty plentiful. You're given infinite continues, although I really wouldn't call them continues, as the game over screen is just a callback to the continue screen from the Genesis games.
This game actually has a lot of callbacks to the classic Sonic games. The badniks are from the Genesis games, the leveled inspiration looks very Genesis-like. It's got more callbacks than Sonic Generations. a game that the only way you'll see DLC for is through PC mods.
Strangely, the boss battles are extremely easy. I don't think I died on a single one. Even the final boss is a joke, although hard stages and easy bosses are uncommon for platform games. Even the most challenging levels in Rayman Origins, I found to have an easy boss. The same goes for Super Mario Galaxy, an easy boss for challenging stages. And if you're the person who complains about the boost to win gameplay from Generations, don't worry, that returns, as the spin dash functions exactly the same. So if you're the person that likes the boost, it's still there, it just looks different. And I'm glad to see the spin dash make a return, along with the super peel out as Sonic's running animation. Lost World has a really well written story, probably the best in the entire franchise. The story is pretty funny and there's really good character development. I'm not going to spoil much, but I want to give a few examples. In one scene, Tails puts Cubot's head on a Badnik body, who in turn goes on the attack due to the body's programming taking over. Eggman pushes Tails out of the way, and when confronted with how he saved Tails, he says that he's a complicated guy. Another scene has a bridge collapse, Sonic and Eggman fall, Eggman grabs the bridge, catches Sonic, and throws him up onto the ledge.
It's scenes like this that make you think, hey, maybe he's not really a bad guy after all. He just wants to take over the world and make it a better place for everyone. And his methods are just a little unorthodox.
We also get a scene with Tails getting furious at Sonic, thinking that Sonic doesn't trust him to stop Eggman's machine, which is very unstable. While you can understand that Sonic thinks that Eggman should do it as he knows his machine the best since he's the one who made it, but you can see that Tails is hurt. After all, his genius rivals that of Eggman's. It's really interesting to see these characters interact with each other, as most of the time when Sonic and Eggman work together, it's always at the end of the game, while this alliance happens at the beginning. The Deadly Six can be read like a book as they wear their personality on their sleeves, pretty literally too. The red one is the leader who is running the show, the purple one is crazy, the yellow one is fat and stupid, the short old blue one is Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid, the green female is very vain, and the gray one is a whiny emo kid, and probably the most annoying one. The red, blue, and green ones are the best written Zeddy in my opinion.
When it comes down to judging Sonic Lost World, you have to understand that it's a completely new experience. So saying that it sucks just because it's different shows a lack of patience and ignorance.
There's a reason why I did a first and second impression. I read several reviews on the game as response from the critics have been really mixed. Some giving the game low scores, labeling it as mediocre, or really good, or while giving the game a mediocre score, they slam the game, which sends a mixed message. Your score says it's okay, but your review says it's garbage. My initial thoughts of the game weren't very positive ones. I saw the game as something severely flawed and way too difficult, and the game does do a terrible job of explaining the new controls. Having to stop and look down at the controller is a deterrent from learning the controls. And the homing attack is different as well, and it can be seen as broken, but in reality, it's more like the Lightspeed dash attack, and if you're not trying to rush the stage, it works just fine.
Sonic Lost World may be the epitome of if it's not broke, don't fix it, but it's also the epitome of give it a chance.
It took me a while to realize that subconsciously I was playing it like Sonic Generations, a game that I'm already used to. I knew going in that the game was going to be a different experience, but I didn't think it was going to be too different. Reading the negative reviews about this game, you can tell that the reviewers were expecting a game to follow Generations. After I got out of the mindset that this game wasn't going to be like Sonic Generations and started treating it like a regular platformer, I started to enjoy it. Yeah, the game isn't as fast as Generations initially, but the game rewards your skill with speed. I've seen speedruns of stages and was amazed at how fast they were done. And as I got better at the game, I was getting that feeling of speed that I got with Generations. I can understand why people wouldn't like it. After all, I've read several reviews of people not liking it. I watched a live stream where the person didn't like it and a friend of mine hated the game. The game is difficult and the new controls are different, and as I said, the game doesn't explain the new controls that well, so you may need to get used to them.
I gave a negative first impression and a positive second impression to show two sides of a coin, because it's very easy to misjudge this game. In actuality, it's more like the classic Genesis games.
So what conclusion can we draw from this? When it comes to the negativity this game has gotten, we can say that some people were expecting Sonic Generations and didn't get it, leading them to say that the game sucks because it's different. Others may not have bothered to learn the controls to build the skill to be able to go through the levels without an issue. Some want the game to hold their hand and this one didn't, or they thought it was just too difficult and quit. I'm sure everyone who didn't like or didn't complete the game has their reasons, and their reasons are unjustified and are pretty reasonable. There are things about this game that people won't like, so it's not for everyone. At time of writing, writing, and as of the 26th of October, the game has sold 20,000 copies globally. 17,500 of those were sold in Europe, and 2,500 of those were sold in Japan, and no numbers are up for America yet. So on the other side of the world, in the game's first week, it sold 20,000 copies. That's not good, especially compared to Sonic Generations' first week of 220,000.
Well, I do hope that somebody picks up that phone, because I frickin' called it.
In my Sonic Lost World Thoughts video, I said that the game wasn't going to be a financial success, and again, at time of writing, so far looks like I was correct. Not many people bought this game, and why is that? Because it's on the Wii U, a system that Nintendo is struggling to sell. So much so that they've discontinued manufacturing the Wii and decided to release that gimpy Wii Mini. If it was on multiple platforms, then it might have sold more copies, but it's on a system that not many people have or wish to have, or by Nintendo's reasoning, don't even know it exists. The 3DS version hasn't sold that many copies either. In fact, it's sold less than the Wii U version, selling under 15,000. It sold twice as much in Japan than the Wii U version, selling 5,000. But it's possible that it will sell better during the holiday season. After all, Sonic Colors didn't sell that well during its first week, but sold really well in the second week and onward, and it sold its most copies during the Christmas season. So there's still hope for it.
So if you come this far in the review, hopefully you'll walk away with a good idea what to expect. Because I really did try to cover every aspect of this game, so this way you can assess to see if it's for you or not.
If you get this game, you must remember that it's going to play differently than past Sonic games. You need to give the game a chance. If you don't, you will get frustrated with it and will probably hate it, like how my negative first impression was. But if you slow down, take your time, and the game does give you a lot of time too, you'll see that it's a pretty enjoyable and challenging platform game that rewards you for your skill and effort. Sonic controls very well once you realize that he controls like Mario. After that realization, his jumping and momentum are just fine. I think that criticism comes from people being so used to Sonic jumping very far due to the previous titles focusing on speed-based gameplay. Should you buy a Wii U for this game though? I wouldn't if it's your only reason. I bought my Wii U for Rayman Legends, Super Smash Bros., New Super Mario Bros., Super Mario 3D World, and then Sonic Lost World, in that order. While Sonic Lost World was my last reason for buying the system, it was the first Wii U title I picked up for it. Because like I said earlier, I wanted Sonic Lost World to be my first Wii U review.
Sonic Lost World may not be for everybody or may give some people a bad first impression. Stick with it though. There's a lot of fun to be had and it's a good game if you give it a chance.